as you can see. Right, welcome along, everybody, as I say, to this, the 6th Annual Moscow Urban Forum, seen as, around the world now, as the leading place to try and identify urban planning problems and to try and find cutting-edge solutions for them. This is something very much at the heart of Mrs. Sobyanin. He's worked tirelessly at this, as you all know, I guess, over the last 6 years. And I'm sure you'll be heartened, sir, to see how many people have turned out here today. It's a really splendid show. Now, when you came to office back in 2010, one of the many statements you made, but one that stands out in my head, was that you said that you wanted to make Moscow, first of all, a comfortable place for Muscovites to live and anyone visiting. You also said you wanted to put it at the forefront here in Russia as the best city in this vast country. And you also said you wanted to broaden horizons as well and have it right up there in the top list of top cities in Europe and indeed around the world. Now that's an ambitious plan. Anyone who's come here today will see the huge amount of work that's ongoing, especially in the centre. A lot of improvements have been made already. But how far would you say you are now into this very ambitious goal? And what three key concerns, topics are at the forefront of your mind now in 2016?
About 5 or 6 years ago, or nearly 6 years ago, when we were speaking about our ambition plans, nobody believed, or not many people believed in our plans. They thought that this is the mere political statement with nothing behind it. To change the huge megalopolis, which is moving in a particular direction with a not very comfortable life, with lots of vehicles, construction sites. Well, it's nearly impossible to change this city, say nothing of making it comfortable, like European cities, for instance, or some other cities of Russia. Well, so it's maybe it's possible, but very hard. Then we were making consecutive steps, and year after year we have been addressing different issues. But the key areas, the key priorities are set out in our programs, comprehensive programs, which includes financial, organizational and managerial resources. And every day we deal with different issues. As for the key areas, we try to resolve transportation problem of the city, which includes the huge set of events, starting from the construction of metro stations, commuting transport, surface transport, traffic management, intellectual information systems, and so on and so forth. These are the key areas and the key tasks for us, because the transportation problems of Moscow were always at the forefront in Moscow, but according to the opinion poll, they rank 4th or 5th. The second area, the second priority is the creation of high-quality social infrastructure, education, healthcare, the attraction of modern technologies, including information technologies in this area, then organizational, financial novelties and transformations. I can say for sure that Moscow ranks first in terms of medical technologies, educational technologies, and of course would like to go to the global level. Of course, we understand all our problems and challenges that we'll have to address. And the third task, or the third priority, is the creation of the comfortable environment in this city. Well, you said that you see what works are going on in the center of the city, but the largest works, the hugest works, are not in the center. We're starting from the yards, parks, and small parks. These are the thousands of facilities across Moscow, and mostly we focus on periphery. So we restructured highways which are located not in the center of Moscow. The center is small, and the minor works are conducted there. And of course, you can see them because you are in the center. It seems to me that all the works are going on only in the center, but our task is to make the comfortable environment everywhere, in the center and in the outskirts, in the suburbs. And comfortable environment means not only some beautification or improvement, but we want people to get access to services where they live. This is the main strategy of Moscow development.
Modeling Moscow on any other city around the world? In your plan, do you envisage it to be like Tokyo, like New York?
Of course, we have the master plan of Moscow development, and we update this plan regularly. But all precise plans that were made 15 years ago are obsolete already. And now our 20 or 30-year plans should be revisited in 5 years, because now we see such huge dynamics and changes in the city's development. Technologies are evolving, and so quite soon technologies become obsolete and our perception becomes obsolete. But all those priorities that I mentioned here, not the master plan is important, but the comprehensive programs and the development of different areas. I've mentioned transport, and we need to have different areas for the development. Then we have financial, economic, construction issues, and all these issues should be addressed, and they all require huge comprehensive programs.
If you could list one main headache you've got right now, carrying through your master plan here, that maybe you didn't envisage when you started talking about this back in 2010?
The main problem or the main headache implementing these plans is to find a compromise. In a huge city, there are many people living, and different people live in social groups, age groups, elderly people, children, youngsters, rich and poor, medium class, middle class. We have scientists, workers, white collars, blue collars, and everyone has their own perception. Sometimes they have absolutely different interests. We have to take into account all the interests and to come to common terms to achieve the compromise. This is the main task when implementing the project. This could not be done without the direct dialogue with our citizens. For that, we use active citizen platform, where we have now 1,300,000 people, and every time we ask people what they think about different projects, about the city development. In addition to traditional communication with our city dwellers, we have also parliaments, councils, public meetings and hearings. So we have a very straightforward relation with our citizens and the feedback.
Okay, so you're well into the master plan at the moment. We know it's going to have to evolve over time, as we've heard from many speakers already today. But as it stands at the moment, try to stand back from it and be as impartial as you can, to know how involved you are in this, very much in your heart. How do you think Moscow squares up with other major global metropolises around the world? How does it stand these days as we are at the moment?
Well, it seems to me it's difficult, and no need to compare Moscow with a museum city such as Paris, because Moscow is a developing city, and it's better to develop it with developing cities, due to our colleagues from Pricewaterhouse who have been conducting the researches of developing cities such as Beijing, Mumbai, Shanghai, Delhi, and some other developing cities. So due to that, we were ranked third, and last year we were in the second place, and today we are among the largest developing megalopolis in the first place. And by the way, this is a huge achievement for us. There's a huge progress for our team and Muscovites.
Competitive advantages of coming to this city, living in this city?
Undoubtedly, this is the scale of the city. The size of the city, this is the heart of Russia, this is the capital of Russia. The largest transportation hub is here. Tens of millions of people come here on different businesses. We have here a high level of qualifications, high level of education. This is the concentration of high scientific potential, and of course the development dynamics and comfortable environment are crucial.
Designing a city that's shining on the world stage, but it has to shine for the people that live here day to day, that have to struggle to get to work. I mean, there's been some criticism, hasn't there, of even just, we're talking about the centre, because that's what's happening outside at the moment. Obviously, this work will be over, I suppose, by the winter, but you do have to get the public on board when they see the traffic jams, as there are at the moment, etc., etc. Are you designing a city, in the end of all this, for the people that live and work here, end of the day?
При таких сложных работах
when we have such complicated works, especially when we restructure streets, well, at the first stage, there are always criticism. Nobody is happy, pedestrians and motor drivers and motorists. But at the second stage, when the comfortable environment is in place, those who are unhappy, who say, for instance, why it was done here, but not in our street, not in our road. Just come to us and make the same improvement for us in our streets.
There has been some criticism, for instance, some other things that have happened here over the last couple of years. You see very few of those little street kiosks that you used to see everywhere. Now there's a balance here on one side that says, yes, it looks much better, much tidier. The other side of it, on a practical level, is a lot of Muscovites, when they go into work, they say, we've got nowhere to go to get the little basics in life, like a newspaper, like an ice cream. How do you challenge that? Is it a fair point or not?
Well, you see, all cities pass the similar stages, and Moscow also passed the same stages, but very rapidly and dramatically. After the Soviet period, Moscow lacks cafes, restaurants, trading floors, and the decision was made to trade in any place if the need arises. That's why the city was filled with tens of thousands of these ugly facilities. They were located in the historical part of the city, close to the metro stations, and the city turned into this bright fair of different colors and buildings and huts. So then the time passed. The first floors or the first stories of the buildings are now occupied by restaurants and shops. And in the forefront, between these civilized trading facilities, we saw these rows of ugly buildings, of ugly structures, and we decided to get rid of those structures. There is nothing bad in it. On the other hand, together with the deputies from our parliament, from municipality, we try to identify those points where we lack, for instance, some shops, and there we have selling point for selling newspapers, ice creams, and so forth. We organize tenders. Small businesses come and they can trade what is necessary, but such points of sale we have in those areas. We have this efficiency of trading areas. And recently we built about 5 million square meters of trading floors, of shopping centers. And now we have even the profit now, the abundancy.
It's entrepreneurs, it's small businessmen. Do you think you've looked after them okay?
Well, in Moscow, small and medium-sized business is developing at a rapid pace. We have lots of individual entrepreneurs, and the number of such entrepreneurs is growing. I have already told you that we have points of sales and the areas for sales. The number of those points has increased, but it's not enough. Entrepreneurship doesn't mean that you just sell goods or provide services. Entrepreneurship, small and medium-sized businesses, mean the development not only in these traditional areas, but also in the new areas, such as information technologies, high technologies. And here, they really need our support of the city. For that purpose, we establish technoparks, we encourage their development, and we start from big technoparks such as Skolkovo and finish with the small technoparks. And up to 10,000 people can work there who promote new ideas, new technologies, and create the future of Moscow.
Plan underway. Another criticism has been that there's been too much of the new, not enough looking after the old buildings, the old architecture here. Again, do you think there's a fair point there, or do you think a balance has been reached?
In our city, in a city like that, it's hard to achieve this kind of balance. This is one of the most important issues that we face now. There was this very dense development, and they also used the so-called targeted development. They were building in the yards of other buildings, and that created a lot of conflicts and a lot of tension. We tried to abandon most of these contracts, and we turned to the more comprehensive development of the city, including some of the industrial areas. And 1/3 of all development today is based on the comprehensive development of the former industrial zones. Another third is in the new territories. So now we're no longer using those targeted one-off projects, but we're using these comprehensive projects where everything is together. We build kindergartens, schools, cultural centers, jobs, and residential buildings. That's very important on the one hand. On the other hand, if we talk about the ancient old buildings of Russia and monuments of Moscow, we have been implementing this huge program of restoring historical monuments. Moscow have not seen such a volume of restoration work in its entire existence. We restored 600 architectural monuments, and now 300 more monuments are being restored. We invest from 15 to 16 billion rubles in the restoration of monuments, including half of that taken from the private investments. It's not only budget financing, but also some private investors who take care about their facilities, and that's a very important area. As we restore road network in the center of the city, it's not only for the street itself, but also to restore and repair historical facades. We remove unnecessary advertising units, wiring, make it clean, and that it's a comprehensive project. And you have your streets and your monuments, and they look very different now.
So when this plan is finished, when everything's in place or largely finished over the next couple of years, this medium-term plan, you think Moscow's going to stand there with a lot of other world cities regarding the way it's looked after its architecture and the way it's showing it off, yeah?
I don't think Moscow needs to copy other cities. Moscow has its own special features, its own face, its own image, but of course we'll be using best technologies and best trends that we have in the global practice, and of course we'll be using some of that too.
Something you said in 2014, you talked about when you were redeveloping Moscow in your grand plan, it needed the wisdom of the old, the energy of the middle-aged. Well, that's if we've got that much energy, but the energy of the middle-aged, and also the enthusiasm of the youth. And of course, over the last 15 years, a new generation calls Moscow their home. They're tech-savvy, they're worldly. Are you designing a city that they're going to want to live in when they become into their 20s and become middle-aged? Are you looking forward enough?
Moscow is such a city that can be home for any generation. And that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to come up with a city that will be interesting for everyone, for the old and for the young. That's a very complex task, but it can be implemented. Cities always attracted a lot of people, a lot of interests. That will always be like that. By the way, we have there are some projects that are based on particularly building that kind of environment, the so-called new urbanism, which is quite fashionable in the world, means that there's going to be this democratic environment. If you go to the Moscow Ice Cream Festival, which is being conducted on our streets now, you will see very different people there, young ones, small kids, and older people, people who are quite affluent, and also common people, but they can all use these nice streets. They can enjoy their city. They can all afford this ice cream, and it creates a totally new atmosphere. Not when we were sitting in their individual buildings and offices. They never saw each other, but they are now all together in the streets of Moscow, and they can enjoy their city. They can talk to one another, see one another, and that's already more democratic environment where everyone feels comfortable.
Chatting backstage just now, and you said that you were very actively trying to develop a street culture. Christmas fairs, summer fairs, autumn fairs. Are you surprised at how successful they've been over the last couple of years, despite the, well, I said weather drawbacks, but you say no to weather drawbacks?
The weather actually helps us, because in summer it's quite hot in Moscow, and that's a good reason to have some summer festivals of jam or ice cream. Winter you have Christmas fairs and skating rinks and skis. Moscow is actually in a privileged position compared to cities where the weather is always the same. We have different climates, different seasons, and that allows us to make the entire program more intensive in terms of how popular they were, those past festivals. It doesn't make much sense for me to talk a lot about that, because the number of people visiting them testifies that. For example, the Christmas fair and the festival were visited by 6 million people. That's a lot of people who came and talked to one another, who found it comfortable, and that's the best testimony of how well we worked.
But what about regards the traffic congestion? We are again chatting about this just now. The traffic congestion you often see in Moscow, is that going to be eased anytime soon? Is there a plan for that? Are you going to introduce something like maybe London does a congestion charge?
One of the, and I spoke about that in the beginning, one of the major projects that we have is the project devoted to the transportation situation. And there are no simple solutions here, as you know. You cannot just make one small thing and solve it all. You have to do simultaneously the construction of roads, metro, paid parking, and going in two directions, sort of. On the one hand, you improve the traffic dynamics. On the other hand, you develop public transport. And there's a third part here. You have to make this choice very clear for motorists. What's more comfortable for them, using the public transport or their own personal cars? Judging by the trends that we see today, more and more people in Moscow choose public transportation. For example, in the center of Moscow, we have a quarter fewer cars than in the past. It means that downtown is now more accessible for taxis and public transport. Remember, 5 years ago, yellow cabs in Moscow couldn't be found in the center. And now, standing anywhere in Moscow, you can see immediately several yellow cabs in the city. in the past, it was nearly impossible to drive through the streets of Moscow. And of course, now we have all these modern technologies that are able to employ tens of thousands of cabs or taxis. And one follows another, and gradually we are resolving this critical issue of transportation.
For me, that's the biggest thing I can thank you for, is bringing in taxi apps. I finally managed to ditch my car after 10 years here sitting in traffic. Well, let's talk about technology and how it's going to help you in your quest to develop Moscow. Technology, of course, by its very nature, always developing, always getting better, getting more sophisticated, just like Moscow, hopefully. What technological developments, innovations excite you most at the moment, if you could name a couple, and how you think you could involve them in the way that Moscow goes forward here, your big plan?
There's no area in Moscow that could be existing without new technologies, IT technologies. The bigger the city, the more complicated it is to manage it without cutting-edge technologies. We have them everywhere. In healthcare, when you have this unified information system allowing you to sign up for a doctor visit and and allowing doctors to use this automated system, exchanging X-ray photos, diagnosis. That's a huge healthcare system helping both patients and doctors. You cannot imagine our transportation system without our smart management system, which covers all streets, millions of cars in those streets, dozens of infrastructural facilities, traffic lights managed by this system. We also manage the public transport routes. And it's all impossible without the system, without these new technologies. And also safety and security depend on that. We installed tens of thousands.
Is there? There we go, we're back. Technology's good, isn't it? Okay, I think we're back on.
We installed tens of thousands of video cameras that monitor safety and security situation. In our utilities sector, we use them a lot, and like GLONASS allows us to control how utility vehicles are moving around. And there's no area where we could get rid of technologies. But one unique technology, it may not be the most complicated, but the one that attracts people to, I already spoke about this active citizen platform, and there's another platform called Our City, where 600,000 people join controlling the city environment. They are our active helpers, always controlling what's going on in the city. And you just cannot shut your eyes on some of those issues. They are public, they are online, and no official cannot avoid following what was offered by the citizens. It's all part of the technologies, it's all part of the regulations. It is rigidly monitored, and 80% of our city problems are dealt with the help of this technology within a couple of days. It's not expensive, but it's a very efficient technology. And without such technologies, it's impossible to efficiently run the city today.
Every city needs a lot of money coming in. It needs businesses working within it. It needs a vibrant economy. How can technology help the economy of Moscow?
It's quite obvious that the economy of Moscow cannot develop without the use of new technologies and new sectors, IT, new developments and solutions in any modern city take over more and more space. Classical industry gives way to technoparks and technopolises, and companies specializing in technology. And I believe this segment is going to develop in the future, not only to come up with new inventions, but also to attract financial flows and investments into the development of the city.
You stand at the moment then with the development plan. What are you most proud of that you've managed to achieve here in Moscow?
Честно говоря, никогда не задумывался.
I never thought about it, but most citizens actively support the changes in the city. It means we're moving in the right direction. We're doing it for the city, for the residents of Moscow, and that's the most important thing.
Sir, thank you very much. Very good luck to you, Sergei
Спасибо.
Sabanin. Thank you, sir.
Спасибо. Спасибо.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as well. Thank
Спасибо.
you, sir.
Сейчас я подойду к вам.